What if your D&D characters had to compete in a major sports event for their next adventure? If that sounds like an exciting idea, click the link on the description right now to download for free the Sports Tournament Guidebook for D&D. If you're as passionate a sports fan as I am, you've probably imagined yourself watching live in the athletics stadium the 100 meters finals. Amusing yourself with the images of a playful Usain Bolt in his endless charisma during the athlete's presentation, feeling the goosebumps with the mind-boggling absolute silence of 80,000 fans in the few seconds before they start, and watching the equally unbelievable outburst of the crowd when the pistol fires and the race starts. I was fortunate enough to witness all of that in person in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. It was a moment of pure joy, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And perhaps you're even as silly as I am to ponder, far from underestimating you, Mr. Bolt, but I bet my wood elf monk could beat you. So, if you're like me, why haven't you turned that passion into a D&D adventure with your group yet? If you've given a good thought to that, you've probably realized how long it would take and how cumbersome it could be to design D&D mechanics that faithfully mirror each sport that makes your heart race. But I was just too stoked for the most extraordinary sports event of humanity right around the corner. So I thought, the heck with it, and went through every detail to create a unique set of rules to adapt sports to D&D in a simple, balanced, and challenging way. I designed this approach so my players can compete with their characters in those sports while we cheer for our favorite athletes and celebrate the best in us and our fellow humans during these 16 days. But I'm just too happy with what I've achieved to keep it for myself and my players. So I decided to share it with you and as many people as possible. And that's why I created this free guidebook for DMs who want to learn a convenient and straightforward approach to mirror a range of sports-required skills, rules, and competition formats, bringing the passion from the arena stands to their game tables. I've created this approach to shape the established D&D skill check rules to fit the dynamics of sports competitions. Our guidebook is aimed at groups who wish to make the very best of exploration encounters and who like to keep the dice rolling while sticking to D&D rules as written. So, if you enjoy watching your players going wild after rolling the dice as if they were in the stands of a sports arena, this guidebook is for you. With it, I wish that you and your group can experience together around your game table a quantum of the emotion I felt with my first childhood memory of a major sports event. The Spanish archer shooting the fiery arrow to light the cauldron and open the games in Barcelona in 1992. And what's the content of our guidebook? You get to know what I did to design an ingenious approach to adapt sports to D&D rules. You learn the game mechanics that I meticulously crafted to mirror real sports skills, rules, and competition formats. You'll discover how I narrowed down a list of over 50 sports and hundreds of competitions to select the perfect events to adapt. You'll find out what I did to understand and capture their features and translate their uniqueness into an engaging gameplay experience. You'll find out how to run these sports competitions in a hassle-free and exciting way within your game sessions, and to guide your players to select the fittest characters for each competition. You'll get to know the step-by-step process for quick and smooth dice rolling, results resolution, and the definition of the final standings for each competition. You will have in your hands a plug-and-play approach to bring a sports event to your campaign. You'll discover what to do to create compelling adventure hooks, always inspiring venues, and challenging rivals that your players will love to defeat, and master how to wrap all that into immersive storytelling that will captivate your players. You will also receive original and exclusive content that will help you apply everything you learn. A ready-to-play sports rules and guidelines, illustrations, venues map, NPC stat blocks, and handouts for your players. So what are you waiting for? Click on the link in the description and download the Sports Tournament Guidebook for D&D. It's free.